This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Samsung Galaxy Note 4, the premier phablet, back again for 2014 in its fourth iteration. Still a 5.7-inch display, but the resolution goes up to 2560 by 1440, and we get metal around the sides. A little harder to tell with the white model here because it has a white finish on top, but still it gives it a nice little pleasing design element. Fingerprint scanner on the front, improved camera on the back. We're going to look at it now. So here it is, the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. As ever, a handful, but not that bad. Now, I have pretty big hands, and I'm pretty tall, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm not 5'2", I'm closer to 6 feet tall. Still, it has not gotten any bigger than the Note 3, and in fact, the screen size is the same, 5.7 inches. And honestly, compared to the iPhone 6 Plus, it's actually not so huge after all. Big changes here, small changes here, we'll talk about them all. Same physical home button here we always see on Samsung device. We have little capacitive backlit buttons on the side for multitasking and home that will light up if you touch them, like so, for 6 seconds. Multitasking, you no longer have to have the funny little pull-out thingy on the side anymore. You can still press and hold the back button to get the drawer of multitasking apps to appear, but no more visual clutter there. Difference here is that the fingerprint scanner is embedded in the home button, just like the Galaxy S5 and the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. Alpha was the first one to have metal sides. Check out that review if you haven't already. That's the 4.7-inch Samsung with the classy design. So this guy here gets actual real metal around the edges. Now, a little bit harder to tell on the white model because they have a white finish over the metal, but you still get the chamfered edges. No more faux chrome, no more cheeseball plastic made to look like metal. This is just around the edges of the phone. Very similar to the Alpha that we reviewed. You get the little bumps on each corner here. That actually does help it to not slide out of your hands. It provides little, extra security points. The buttons also are metal, nicer than they ever have been on Samsung phones. Actually, a little bit firmer and a little bit harder to accidentally press, which is a great thing. We got nice little curves here that follow the headphone jack, these little stylistic kind of elements. So definitely an improvement on the aesthetic front. The back is still plastic. The front, of course, is going to be glass. So it's not a unibody metal phone like an HTC phone or like an iPhone. But, there are things to be said for plastic. It doesn't get as cold. It's not as slippery. It allows for a removable back, which we still have here. Good times. So grab point is always on Samsung phones. By the way, if you don't like the white with the faux kind of leather or pleather finish here, it's also available in black, and then you will get the aluminum sides all the way around, no paint job on the sides to color it at all. I think they're both actually pretty nice looking phones. Not stunning, not gorgeous, like say the new Moto X 2014 with its variety of colors and finishes, or the iPhone or the HTC, they have a certain clean look. Even the Xperia with its glass look, it's still nice. Different battery from the Note 3. Notice it's tall, kind of narrow, 3220 milliamps, so up from 3200. That's pretty unimportant increase in size. Still a micro SIM card slot, not going with a nano SIM. A phone this big, there's no reason really. Micro SD card slot right there. So all the good things you get from being able to take your back cover off. This is not waterproof, however. There's no inside the cover, those funny little waterproof kind of things that you have like on the Galaxy S5, because this is not waterproof, so no playing in the bathtub with it. At least if you do it very carefully. Speaker still on the bottom, still just average, mediocre, not really very loud. For a phone this big, you think they could have put a bigger speaker on there, but that's just not the way Samsung rolls. And that's our S Pen right there, which is a Wacom Technology digital pen, not just a capacitive stylus. Now on the bottom here we have our micro USB port. Notice it's 2.0, not 3.0. Samsung must have given up on that. I can't blame them. I don't think anybody ever really cared about faster data transfer over a USB cable all that much, and it was sometimes quirky to get it working. The good thing is a quick charge charger comes in the box. That's the one that can get you up to maybe 50% of your battery charge in just 30 minutes with a battery this immense. That's pretty important. And it looks just like the past Samsung chargers, just a little bit taller, and it says quick charge on it. And indeed, it is very quick to charge. 2 microphone holes down here. Volume controls are on the side with a little depression in between, so you can actually feel which is which with your finger. Very intelligent little thing to do there. Headphone jack obviously up top right there. There's our IR window. We still have Samsung's watch on and the AV remote control on this. And on this side, just the power button. And for those of you who are thinking about upgrading from the Note 3, this one right here, or maybe picking up the Note 3 because it's going to be discounted on carriers, here they are together, pretty much the same size. The new Note is just a smidgen taller, but otherwise just about the same. 1080p screen here versus the 2560 by 1440 screen, and on the side the difference in aesthetics is obvious. The plasticky chrome versus the cleaner and nicer new line here with the aluminum around the edges. Of course, if you're going to wear a case, maybe looks are not so important to you after all. Otherwise, they both have the faux leather backs. Of course, the last generation gets the stitching, but I think so many reviewers made fun of the stitching along the edges that Samsung just summarily dropped that really quickly. And here it is next to the iPhone 6 Plus, which is even a bit taller. The Note is 6.04 inches tall versus 6.22 inches tall. iOS, obviously, versus Android, probably the operating system is going to be your biggest consideration there between these two, but this is really just for size comparison and for looks comparison. Of course, the iPhone available in 3 colors. This one happens to be the space gray, or otherwise known as, well, darker silver versus light silver or gold. Pretty close in weight, really not a big difference there. And here we have the little old Samsung Galaxy S5, 5.1-inch phone, so you get the idea, and the difference in size, difference in styling. This has a curve around the back, whereas straight-sided styling with our Note phone. And from the front view, you get the idea of the size difference right there if you're trying to consider which of these two that you want. Notice the edges of the Samsung Galaxy Note 4 look almost like curved glass right there. Now, when you feel it with your finger, it's not so much, but there's actually a bevel of plastic underneath the front here that gives the illusion of a bevel. So it looks pretty nice, but it feels very flat if you put your finger on it. Some conundrum about the whole, somebody fit a business card here along the top edge. Samsung says it's designed to have a little gap there and it may change. We could not possibly fit a business card in that gap right there. If you look at it, yeah, you're going to see it, and there's like no gap at the bottom edge in comparison, but nothing that I'm concerned about. Up front here we have a 3.7 megapixel selfie camera now, so you get better quality there, and it also does wide angle, and there's a bunch of little tricks there, including sort of like a stitched together panorama to kind of capture more of the scene that you are in. Earpiece up top over here. We really didn't have any problems with outgoing audio quality, as ever, despite the fact the phone's pretty big, and if you hold this up to your ear, the microphones might not be aligned with your mouth, but worked fine for us. Voice quality in this has been good. Not stellar, not stunning, but it has been good, certainly pretty good. So no complaints there. Data speeds, this is the AT&T model. Obviously, you probably saw the logo on the back. At par for the course, they have very good coverage here in the Dallas area, and we saw up to 55 megabit per second downloads and around 11 megabit up. So yeah, good times there. It's available on all major carriers, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile here in the US. That means there'll be some smaller carriers having it as well. And of course, overseas, you guys will get this as well. Now, specs for the phone. This is one of the first phones that has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 805 quad-core CPU. That is clocked at 2.7 gigahertz, really 2.65, but let's round up. Samsung certainly does. Adreno 420 graphics, a little performance boost there in the graphics department. 3 gigs of RAM. Now, Samsung and their TouchWiz, they do a lot of software in here. They need that extra RAM. So it isn't just, wow, they're so generous, more than other manufacturers. They kind of really need it. And 32 gigs of internal storage. Yay, that's so good. 16 gigs is so 2013 for your big flagship phone. Also has that micro SD card slot compatible with cards up to 128 gigs in capacity. We have dual band Wi-Fi, AC, NFC, Bluetooth, and the usual GPS on board as well. And of course, it wouldn't be anything if it didn't have a health monitor these days. That's another Samsung thing that they do. Sensor is right here next to the LED flash, and you put your finger on there, and it doesn't just tell you your heart rate anymore. Just that wouldn't be enough. It also does your blood oxygen level. Some of you probably don't even know what that is. When you go to your doctor and they take your temperature and they put the little thingy on your finger, they also measure your blood oxygen level to make sure you have some decent level of fitness and that your lungs are actually working, basically. Make sure you have enough oxygen in your blood. It seems to work pretty well. I have never gone to the doctor and seen less than 100%. It did register me once at 96. I kind of doubt that that was actually right, but give or take, you don't have a hypochondriac attack if it shows you a little bit less than you expected. Likewise, the pulse meter is actually pretty accurate on this now too. And we have our little widget here for S Health that just launches the application. We have our step going right there. And on the lock screen, it's going to show us also that stuff. So it tells you, again, how to use it. It tells you to put your finger on there. I'll put my finger on there. And there, it takes a while to do the blood oxygen level. It's quicker if you're just going to check your pulse. As you know, I always feel like, well, most people who are pretty physically active, they already know how to take their pulse by putting 2 fingers on the wrist or on your neck. But there it is. It can help you keep track of your fitness levels, if nothing else. So that's there too. In terms of the software and the interface, this is Android 4.4.4 KitKat, the latest, greatest currently until Android L comes out next month. When this gets it, I don't know. Of course, it will get it. Samsung always manages to get it to us. It's going to be up to the carriers in part also, because they have to approve everything with carrier brand devices. It's TouchWizzy as ever. Nothing has changed there very much. It's also reasonably quick. I've noticed occasionally still a little bit of lag every once in a while here and there. This is the AT&T one, so there is a whole lot of AT&T bloatware. Now, Samsung has their Galaxy apps, and you can use that to download. Even something like Watch On is not preloaded anymore, or Samsung's Memo application. So just use the Galaxy apps if you want those. So they're trying not to clutter as much with all of their software on board. If we take a look at the settings, it's still the same very big thing here. It takes up a lot of space. You can choose which of these is here. I have actually removed some because it had just about everything in the kitchen sink up there as a toggle or control. And there's our brightness control. Auto brightness, I still find a little conservative. It can be a little dark now. In a bright room like this, it's probably going to be pretty similar. Let's see. No, still a little bit brighter if we turn it off. If you're outdoors, it's the same story with Samsung phones. It's been for a while. If you want the max auto brightness, you'll only get it when you have it on auto, which I find annoying because I tend to turn it off indoors because I find it too dark. Then you go outside and pull it out, phone out when you've gotten out of your car and say, oh, I'm having trouble seeing the screen. You have to fuddle through the murk and turn on auto brightness, but it will work. Maximum brightness for the whole screen is just under 400 nits, which is not that impressive, but for Super AMOLED, which this is pretty good. But if you turn on auto brightness, it can hit as high as 750 nits. And it does an amazingly weird kind of thing. When you do that, actually, it kind of does a super high contrast, super blown out of the bright colors, like the yellow right here. It just gets super exaggerated. So if you're using it to take a photograph, which is one of the times when you really need more detail on the screen, it will help you see more, but everything is going to look kind of blown out in terms of contrast and all that sort of thing, and brightness. Don't worry about it. It's really going to take a lovely picture, as I discovered. So back to the settings. Over here we have the usual Samsung approach to things right here, and I actually have the fonts set to extra small. It's still pretty big, given the fact this is a big phone, so you have things. I like the tab option there instead of the full long list, help separate things a little bit. So display, notice here the usual things: screen rotation control, your brightness, your font. We have adaptive display mode, we have adjust screen tone. We've seen that before. Now adjust screen tone isn't as devious as it used to be. It used to look at the whites on a web page and say, oh, well, that's wasting a lot of power, and kind of make everything look nasty pinkish. Not so anymore. Samsung has done a great job with this of actually getting a very color accurate display, even in their adaptive screen, which may go into their AMOLED cinema mode. It may be very saturated, but it's not as crazy as it was before. So we have AMOLED Photo, which is full Adobe RGB. Notice it kind of warms things up a bit, because this still can run towards the bluish, almost magenta-ish. Sometimes if the brightness isn't turned up that high, you'll notice it more. Also, if you use adaptive mode, it really, when you're reading, if you go to Google Play Books, it will kind of mute the display a little bit. That color tone might be more obvious. Basic will get you sRGB. Those of you who are into image editing, video processing, all that sort of stuff, you know the difference. sRGB is the narrower color gamut. It's what the better Windows laptop screens display 100% of. Now, if we go to AMOLED Photo, which is Adobe RGB, then you have somewhat wider color gamut. That's the one that I would prefer. That gives you these natural, a little bit less cold tones right there, though the color calibration is not so bad, even in adaptive. AMOLED Cinema amps everything up, the color levels and the contrast. Now, one thing that Samsung has done is in all modes, including AMOLED Cinema, which is by far the most vibrant, they're amping all the colors equally, so you don't get a kind of unnatural look as much. It may be better than life, which a lot of people love, though I still find it a little bit more restrained than the last generation Galaxy Note 3. But it's still going to be a bit amped up. And if you leave it at adaptive, as it explains right here, it depends on what you're doing. If you're looking at a photo, it can increase or decrease saturation, contrast, brightness, all of those different things. Like I said, if you're doing something, ebook reading, for example, it's going to drop the brightness because it's not so good for your eyes to be staring at a stark, bright white screen when you're reading. We still have the Smart Stay feature, which I actually like. It was not turned on by default. I turned it on. It uses the front camera, keeps an eye on you. It won't turn off the screen if you're being a little slow reading, for example. Samsung has gotten rid of some of the features that I think nobody used here and nobody's going to even notice pretty much that are gone. Not particularly pertaining to display. Now in multi-window right here we have a new option, pop-up view shortcut. You can also automatically open supported apps in multi-view mode automatically too. I like that new pop-up view, and it works pretty well in conjunction with the S Pen. Speaking of that, this is a Samsung Galaxy phone, and so of course it has the Wacom technology S Pen, pressure sensitivity, precise, teeny tip here, not a fat finger capacitive stylus kind of thing. So good for you. R-Type's also much better for note-taking because, well, number one, it's more precise. The other reason is you get palm rejection, so you can rest your hand on the screen without accidentally having input. We still have the Air command right here, and as you hover, we still have the hover stuff, you see you can do screen write, capture a screenshot and draw on it. You can do image clip, you can do smart select, and you can do action memo. Action memo is the floating little memo application. There it is right there. It gives me a little clue. And it's called Action Memo because if you do something like write out a phone number, and this actually works pretty well, and I have terrible handwriting. You write it, you hit the action circle thingy right over there, and it will offer to make a phone call. Now, it'll show you the number it's going to dial. It doesn't actually hit the dial button for you, so you can make sure it got the number right. You can do things like write yourself a reminder, call vet, and then schedule it as a task. So it's a pretty handy little thing. Close it like that. So if you want to see the multitasking applications, you can still press and hold the back button. We have our Gmail, we have the Chrome web browser, we have Samsung's video player. We have a great desire to go away and hide. Google Playbooks, Maps, Play Movies and TV. The YouTube player is on here, Google Hangouts. S Note, of course, which is Samsung's pretty good note-taking and drawing application. S Finder, not as excited by that. Google Play Music. So you can multitask with any of those. So say you want to see the file manager. So there it is. It just does it all by itself. So see, this is a resizable window now, and you can tap right there to do things. You can make it full screen. You can make it even smaller. You can close it up. You can grab it by the resize handle and just resize it, move it around, and say we want to have another application. And you can also use the multitasking interface to do this and just grab a card and throw it up there too. So let's bring up S Note next. And there it is right there. So it's giving me the introduction to S Note at the moment. And again, I can move these around. I can scroll inside of these. I'm going to use the pen to actually drag these things around and resize them. So I think this is a little bit more sophisticated than just the straight split window view that we used to have. I think this is kind of how, well, most of us are actually used to working on computers, where you have resizable floating windows. You put them wherever you want. So pretty cool there. And 5.7 inches is not a lot of screen real estate to work with. If you're using a 10 or 12-inch tablet, it makes more sense, or a computer, but still, all in all, pretty cool, and a good evolution of this. And I have to say, Samsung's been doing this for 4 years now, 4 generations. They're really getting their act together. They know how to make a big screen phone with phablet features, whereas Apple pretty much just gives you a bigger phone. You get all these bells and whistles. Of course, we'll have a smackdown with the iPhone 6 Plus to talk about whether you like all the bells and whistles or not, and whether that's a good thing. But I think, obviously, for Note buyers, it is a good thing. And we'll check out S Note again, pretty much the same as last generation. You can choose from all these different templates right here, just a blank piece of paper, particularly handy if you want to do drawing, for example, diaries, meeting notes, checklists, schedules, all that sort of thing. We'll go with note paper for this one. And you can choose to sync to Evernote, which I always think is pretty darn handy right there. You can sync to your Samsung account, which is, well, handy if you had a previous note and you want to keep all your notes that you did before and keep them all synced. And we get nifty little animations there. forever lots and lots of clues here and hints. Samsung always has little pop-ups. So you can do S Pen and finger mode or S Pen only. We're going to go for that right now. So you got your tools right here. You got text, input. You can actually, yes, use the on-screen keyboard right there if you want to. And there it is, the same Samsung keyboard that they've been using for quite some time. I have no qualms. I like the big number row. It's a good use of the space right there. I think they could make these keys a little bit bigger, to be honest, given the screen real estate instead of so much separation, but who knows? Maybe that helps people not accidentally hit the wrong key. Our eraser, our pen mode. Or I could take a note. And it does a nice job of smoothing out your handwriting and making you think that you're really not as much of a slob when you write as you probably are. And if we use the little ... which unfortunately is shaped like a cloud, so you might think it's about cloud syncing and services, it's not. You can do something like choose properties, cut, copy, transform into, in this case, usual formula, text, or make my shape even prettier. We're going to go for text and see how it does. Hello world. Yes, it figured it out. So there it is. Note taking. Obviously, you can draw with this too. You can download ArtRage. It's one of the freebies that you can get from Galaxy Apps. And ArtRage is a program that I love a lot on Windows platform. It does okay here. Needs a little fine tuning. And we'll go to ArtRage just so you can see. Of course, there's Alias Sketchbook Pro too. You get the Galaxy edition with this too if you wish. So here we're in ArtRage. I have the pencil selected right now, and you can see the pressure sensitivity if I go light, pressing heavy. Now there's a bit of lag. That's the thing I noticed, and hopefully ArtRage is going to address that because my circles are kind of noticeably behind my actions. They do eventually catch up. The parallax, the pen tip alignment is actually pretty good on this. It's a good start. Definitely, I think that they'll improve that. And like I said, you also get Sketchbook Pro on this, which does work with pressure sensitivity. So if you're the art type, works just as well as the Note 3, certainly for art apps. Now how about synthetic benchmarks? Quadrant, 24,327. Usually we see about 22,000, so a little improvement there from the Snapdragon 805. On Tutu, 46,912. Usually we see 42 to 44,000, so 46,900. There's an improvement there too. Not earth-shattering, but it's there. 3D Mark Ice Storm Unlimited, 19,677. Now that's pretty similar to actually what we have seen with other Snapdragon 801 quad-core 2.5 gigahertz models. SunSpider WebKit 425, where lower numbers are better. That's very, very good right there. And Geekbench 3, 1,097 for the single core. Now, not many phones break the 900s for the single core, so that's a nice little bit of improvement. 3214 for the multi-core test. So certainly a competent piece of hardware and enough to drive everything that's going on with the floating window applications, all the stuff, the S Pen actions, monitoring whether you pulled it out, all that sort of thing. By the way, if you can set it, and by default this feature is on, if you happen to leave your S Pen somewhere and walk away, the phone can start beeping to let you know you left your pen behind. So that's a good feature right there. So that big resolution improvement here, how much of a difference does it make? Honestly, I think the last generation Note 3 was pretty darn clear at full HD, 1920 by 1080, but I'll never say no to more pixels. 515 ppi. We're talking so far above what a human eye can discern at 2020 in terms of individual pixels. It gets to be crazy. Now, to be honest, Samsung has to go with a higher resolution relative to LCDs or IPS because this is a Super AMOLED display. It uses diamond pixel layout, fewer subpixels for those of you who get all geeky about displays. So to make sure that the sharpness looks as good and you don't see any color fringing, that extra PPI pixel density really helps. That said, these colors are gorgeous. The blacks, as ever with Super AMOLED, really nice and black. Very sharp text, looks just as nice as the iPhone 6 Plus. And the whites are pretty darn white. No more dingy, bluish, pinkish, whatever on the screen. So it is quite nice. And here we have Google Playbooks, and really, again, beautiful text. Even though I have the point size set pretty small there, very easy to read, very sharp. In person, the whites look pretty darn white. It automatically does dim the display a little bit and increase contrast. That's what it does with Google Playbooks when you have Samsung's adaptive display turned on there, but it's nice. It's really nice. So how about the camera? 16 megapixel rear camera, has HDR, has auto flash, can do 4K video recording at 30 frames per second or full HD 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. And we have all these here. Rear camera selfie, just in case you find the front resolution at 3.7 megapixels, just not quite sufficient right there. Selective focus, actually that works pretty well. It does background defocusing, and the only drawback is you have to hold the phone still for a period of time. It's sort of like the way the Galaxy S5 is when you take low light pictures. You know how it made you hold the phone still for a long time? Panorama mode, manage modes, download more modes. One nice thing about Samsung is here they keep it simple. We don't have a whole lot of stuff on the screen to confuse you. You've got HDR control right there. You can actually decide what things are going to be on that side. And if you want to get to all of your settings, there they are. So you got ISO, exposure value, tap to take a picture, metering modes, all these sorts of things are still available, so lots of manual control, which is nice as well. Obviously here, if you want to shoot video, you just tap the video button instead and it'll switch to doing that. You can switch your front mirror cameras. You can access gallery right there, and let's take a look at some. After we're done with this, we're going to splice in some 1080p footage that we shot with the phone, and you can see hear the audio quality, which is actually very good. The colors are a little bit ultra zingy, but other than that. So this is a photo I took with background defocus. This looks like something I would have taken with an SLR. I'm actually really impressed with this. We didn't have that much distance right here from some of the background elements. You need a couple of feet, but still, it looks just very nice and pin sharp here on the front. So pretty impressed. Flowers, not so much that this is a gorgeous composition, but you can see the usual problem with some blooming on reds. That is not unusual with phone cameras and even some point-and-shoot cameras. Normal with our little Buddha right there, and yes, he has a chip on his nose. That's not overexposure on his nose right there without the background defocus effect. And if we zoom in, you can see all sorts of detail, the patina, his poor chip nose. You can even see his teeth pretty clearly. So it's done a nice job there, and a lot of detail in the rocks as well. Backyard shot, very sharp. The water, you can see the ripples on it there. And if we look at the grass, that's something that usually gets painted on. And it's just a teeny bit painterly, but really more detail than you see in a lot of camera phones. So it really gives good competition to the iPhone. Now, here is a not really well-lit shot of our cute little kitty right there. And it's not that bad. Actually, the cat looks pretty good, and there's a lot of detail there. So it's an improvement for Samsung. There is noise in this wall. In fact, the wall just blacks out completely. It is a dark green kind of wall. So, as a low-light camera, it's gotten better, certainly from the Galaxy S5 and the Galaxy Note 3. It's still not quite there as a top low-light camera. But in good lighting, yeah, it's nice. So here we are shooting 1080p video with the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. The stabilization looks pretty good on this. We're moving in and out of the sun, and it's handling that pretty well. And audio quality recording is pretty good as well. All right, now we're in Asphalt 8, a demanding 3D racing game. Oh, it looks nice. Really nice. Sharp and colorful. And it plays pretty smoothly too. Pretty controllable accelerometer. Very good frame rates on this. I'm not seeing a whole lot of frame jumping. Definitely plays smoothly. Of course, the Snapdragon 805 is the latest, greatest, so if it don't play well on this, it don't play well on anything. Of course, NVIDIA with their Tegra K1 CPU would say, there's always us too, and that is true, but you won't see that in a phone, given its power and heat requirements. So that's Asphalt 8 on the Samsung Galaxy Note 4. So how has heat on the phone when you're doing like something like, well, just playing Asphalt 8 like we were? Right back here, you're going to feel some warmth. It does not get burning hot. It's cooler than the Xperia Z3 Compact, in fact, which really crams a lot of components there and is under glass versus plastic, which tends to not directly radiate heat as much, so it's not going to burn your hand off. How about battery life? 3220 milliamp battery, that's pretty big capacity, but Samsung has also put the Snapdragon 805 in here and increased the display resolution. We're still testing battery. We've been using this for a couple of days, and so far it seems like for average use, some web browsing, obviously playing music with the screen off, watching a couple of YouTube videos, pretty similar to the Note 3, which isn't a surprise that they're managing the increased resolution very well. Also, the Snapdragon 805 is even more power efficient, particularly when using LTE. LTE used to actually drain more power than Wi-Fi with the Snapdragon, and now that's not the case. You can actually sometimes get better gas mileage, so to speak, on LTE than Wi-Fi. Things that use the screen heavily, like playing, well, Asphalt 8 like we just did, you can really notice the power drain. Playing streaming video depends on your brightness. If you have brightness, say, set to about 2/3 of maximum and you're not using auto brightness there, you can watch the battery go down, 10% in an hour easily enough, maybe even 15%. Still, all day, yes, it'd be pretty hard to kill this in less than a day. There's just that large a battery in here, and that's a good thing. And you can check out our written review in a couple of days, and you will see how our final analysis is after we've done some more battery tests. Now, all of our battery tests are real-life tests. Synthetic benchmark for battery are never really tell the story of using it. A lot of phones do well or poorly sometimes in a synthetic benchmark, whereas in real life they can be quite different from that. But so far, clearly, it's going to be an all-day phone. Is it going to be a 2-day phone? I'm still not so sure. Now, that gets to an interesting thing. There's also, overseas, not here in the US, there's a Samsung Exynos CPU version of this, the ones that don't have LTE integration, generally speaking, because Qualcomm makes the LTE radios, Qualcomm makes the Snapdragon. So you'll see those in the LTE phones now. I can't speak for the Exynos version of this. We'll just be looking at the Snapdragon 805. But for those of you who are wondering, what's the CPU? I have an Exynos, or I'm ordering one with an Exynos. That explains that. One last bit of software before we sign off is HandCom Office. Now, don't get wildly excited here. This is not the same as on some of the Samsung Pro Series tablets, which looks just like, say, Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. It's a smaller UI, and they know that. So, say I want to create a new Word document. This UI is going to be more Spartan. That doesn't mean that there aren't things you can do here. So you can see we've got some basic preferences and stuff like that there, but say I want to get into fonts and formatting. You have a lot of options here, actually object insertion, image insertion, all that sort of stuff too. So it's pretty capable. Obviously you can create documents and not just view them as well. So how much is this guy going to set you back? That really depends on your carrier and your country. Even in the US here we have quite a bit of variation. Most carriers are offering this at $299 with a 2-year contract. And how many of you are still going with the 2-year contract, I don't know, versus one of the monthly payment plan options. Full retail, Verizon is the cheapest right now. It's $700 full retail. T-Mobile and Sprint are at $749. AT&T is charging a hideous $825. Why they are charging so much more for the phone, I don't know. That will affect your monthly payments, whether you're paying full retail or you're paying out in 18-month, a 12-month, a 24-month payment plan. Obviously, your payments are going to be a little higher in AT&T as a result too. And payments for this run somewhere from $35 to $41 a month, depending on your carrier pricing and the duration of your payment plan that you choose. So this is an expensive phone. To think that this is actually more expensive than the iPhone 6 Plus on AT&T is really shocking, just because Apple tends to have the most expensive stuff, though Samsung's going for that high price tag a lot lately too. Anyway, it's a big investment. You can certainly get a nice laptop for that price, and only you know if it's worth it to you, and that goes with any of these high-end phones. One thing you can say about your phone is a lot of us use this way more than anything else. You read on it, you watch movies on this, you stay in contact with friends. So in terms of hours of use, it certainly could be worth it to you. The Samsung Galaxy Note 4 available now on most carriers. Still a fabulous phablet at 5.7 inches rather. It's on the big side, but it's still pretty manageable, and the square sides make it easy to hold on to. You get a really lovely display on this. A very good camera. Low light still could use some work there, but overall, good 4K video recording, good 1080p video recording, nice multitasking, and the S Pen, of course. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.